Australia's Labor Prime Minister, John Curtin.
I'm happy to be back in Australia. I've seen many things and many places. And although every man can be forgiven for loving his own country best, I believe it is an impartial assessment of the facts to say that I have not seen any country or any people better than my own.
Welcome to Curtin's Cast, the John Curtin Research Centre's podcast, brought to you by myself, Nick Dyrenfurth, and Redbridge's Cos Samaras. Each week, we bring you the freshest and most challenging conversations from the world of Australian and global politics, culture, and ideas. Good morning, Curtinistas. Welcome back to Curtin's Cast. I'm Nick Dyrenfurth, Head Honcho, Executive Director of the John Curtin Research Centre. Welcome back to my co-conspirator, the one, the only, Australia's number one pollster, Cos Kung Fu, Cos Samaras. Good morning, Cos.
How are you?
I've missed you.
Yeah, likewise. You had a holiday.
Our listeners have missed you. We've had our midwinter recess, Cos, like the pollies.
Mm-hmm.
We're both well rested. You're tanned, stripped down, ready to go. And let's jump into the latest polling numbers. We're going to be deep diving into the Victorian state election, which is now only four months away, Cos.
That's right.
But I thought we'd do a quick national federal check-in. What happened? What's been happening whilst you and I have been away?
The only real change is really the surge that we were witnessing over the last 6 months is, I think, now come to an end. One Nation's reached its ceiling, and that ceiling is being propped up by what I would argue is some of Hanson's overreach when it comes to certain positions she has taken, whether it's at the National Press Club or subsequent interviews that she's conducted, where she has, I would say, misdiagnosed why she's reached 30%. She's still talking to that 6.7% that voted for her at the last federal election, and thinks that the rest of that base that's come to her, or as I like to use the term, she's renting it. She's misdiagnosed them, and she's beginning to create problems for her and her political movement. Indeed,
You got to wonder, what is she doing, wandering around Luton and London with the likes of Tommy Robertson, effectively a neo-fascist cos, with a criminal record. Everyone deserves a second chance, but this guy, he's a real bad seed cos. And back home we've got Malcolm Roberts causing trouble. Even this morning, cos, he's calling for hundreds of thousands of people resident in Australia to be remigrated, borrowing from that alt-right, far-right language which we've seen.
Wants to deport people.
Correct.
Yes. Wants to deport people. She's taken a position in the National Press Club that workers are lazy, that it's too hard for employers to sack them, that women get it too easy, both from a domestic violence perspective, but also from childcare. I don't see any hope or positivity in anything they're saying right now. It's all about taking things away from people. You do not win elections by always taking things away from people.
But that would go against the grain of 3-decade career in national politics, cos I don't think she's ever offered hope. That's part of the shtick. And that's also why there are, almost 1 in 3 Australians have indicated, and I think it's really important for us to stress, they've indicated at the moment that they're prepared to put a 1 next to One Nation.
Yes.
In the voting booth, but there's a lot of water to come under the bridge. Labor seems to be pretty much holding its ground. If I was Team Albanese, I'd be pretty comfortable at this point in the election cycle. Yes, there's a significant threat from One Nation to its working class base in the outer suburbs, and less so, less acutely in the regions. For the Liberals, not much has changed. We've had that leadership switch at the beginning of the year where they dumped Susan Ley, Liberals' first female leader, And if anything, it's got worse under Angus Taylor.
Yeah, I think that they've almost become irrelevant to the national conversation. I mean, that's just how bad he has managed the politics of his party's existential crisis. He's not clearly, well, he's made a number of mistakes. He's tried to look like One Nation, sound like One Nation, and in doing so, thinking that he could actually address their decline. Their vote's still in the high teens. It hasn't moved all that much. It bounces around a bit. These polls are going to keep bouncing around for some time now. Going back to your point around the Labor camp, look, what Pauline has now provided, whether it's the left side of politics or the right side of politics, being the coalition, with ammunition now. And so, she will be subjected to a campaign. It will be significant. It will be nationwide. Labor will run a campaign, whether it's Labor or the unions, a campaign against her, particularly on industrial relations.
Yes.
And we know that the particular group of people that have walked from Labor to One Nation tend to be susceptible to a campaign of this nature. And she's now provided not only her opponents an ability to basically package up her statements, but she's done it on a set of policies that do create problems for One Nation with regards to what I would define as a sort of red One Nation voter, a person who has historically voted Labor, but has indicated was supporting One Nation going forward. They do not like, when exposed, her policies with regards to industrial relations.
Yes, I think the best described. These are soft One Nation voters, but it's extraordinary, cause that what you've just said, that the Liberals are effectively irrelevant. This is the party of Deakin. This is the party of Joe Lyons. Well, he was UAP, but
yeah,
and a Labor rat. This is the party of Menzies, Fraser, Howard, are now effectively irrelevant. But that soft One Nation vote, because what kind of proportion of the people who are saying they will vote for One Nation presently, if we could put a sort of ballpark number on that, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so you're looking at, let's say the vote's about 30, which is what's it basically hovering. It drops a little bit, goes up a little bit. I would say 5% belongs to Labor.
Yep.
We used to sit on Labor's pile. I think there's another 10% to fall away if, for example, when Andrew Hastie takes control of the Liberal Party, where he will take a much more aggressive approach to her. So I think that really her true base is about 15%.
I think you're right there on Hastie. I mean, Hastie would be able to pick up an obvious attack line that Labor can weaponise, because he's really writing the script for opponents.
Yes.
The particular line which struck me, that workers are lazy. And for some reason the Liberals are unable. They talk a lot about hard work and aspiration, but again, they're absent from the debate here. And someone like Andrew Hastie, who understands the centrality of work, has talked a lot about reindustrialisation, I think has the potential to actually grab that and appeal to people. I mean, as I said, she's writing her opponent's script. If you're a worker, cause now we know that mainstream media, we know that legacy media is under assault, but if you're watching an advert, you get home from a hard day's work, cause you get home to an election advert, or you're scrolling on your phone, you see something on Instagram or wherever, that's a real cut through line to, you've done a hard day's work, and then a tack ad comes up reminding you that Pauline Hanson thinks you're lazy.
Yeah, the majority of the workforce now finds itself working longer hours for overall less pay. A lot of the work they do is insecure. I would say it's the exact opposite. Australians are working harder than ever before. All the statistics that you can go and dig online will show you this, that people are working much longer hours. They're not doing the 8-hour day anymore. They're working after hours as well, because obviously they've got to answer emails or whatever. If they're working in trades, they're working again longer hours. The story goes on. And, calling workers lazy whilst then flying off to Europe and enjoying, the sunshine in Sicily is again.
White Lotus style. 'Cause
Yes, correct. So it's
the bigger point, cause is I can't remember the last time she said anything optimistic about Australia.
no,
3 decades.
No.
You've got someone who she probably thinks herself as an Australian nationalist and as an Australian patriot. When is the last time she's actually said anything positive about Australia?
I can't remember.
Nothing good seems to have happened after the 1980s in Pauline's world.
This is the vulnerability, I think, also that someone like Hastie could actually tap into, and that is that, and he's already started with some of this narrative, which is she's not patriotic, she's Trump first, Australia second. I think that could work quite significantly within that sort of conservative base that's moved to her.
That's right, mate. She's all the way with Donald J. Clever columnist came up with that line. Let's move to Victoria, Cos. If someone hasn't followed Victorian politics for 12 months, like our cunning producer in the studio today, our lovely sandgroper, a West Australian, how would you describe the race today? And we are going to have to talk about the elephant in the room. That is Jacinta Allan's leadership.
Yeah, I mean the contest here is writ large. It's three-way. We have the coalition in the 20s. We have Labor in the 20s. We have One Nation eating into both the coalition and Labor's base. Labor's probably being pressured on two fronts. That one from One Nation, the outer suburbs and regions, and the Liberal Party in historically what I would say middle urban sort of electorates, a sort of electorates that after the 2022 election, some within Labor thought that was the new territory and they were rejoicing the new paradigm where they no longer had to speak to working class people in the outer suburbs because they would have this new base in the eastern suburbs. Unfortunately for them, that was a fantasy.
Yes, there are limits to the Brahmin left. That's right. Brahmin left's appeal. Most people, as I love to remind people, 70% of Australians do not hold a university degree. They're the super majority. Now, that proportion is slowly decreasing, but most people have year 12 or TAFE or technical qualification. They're the main game in politics. Talk us through the numbers, Cos. How is Victoria looking on primary vote? And we've now got sort of 3 major parties. Yep. I guess what's a 3-party preferred vote look like?
Well, I think the best way we can talk about Victoria is we'll go through the regions and explain the politics, right? So where will the coalition find the largest levels of stress at the ballot box versus One Nation? It would be in the regions. It would be in electorates where perhaps the National Party doesn't have an incumbent, and it loses ground to One Nation in a very significant way. But having said that, One Nation needs to secure a very significant primary vote to knock off National Party MPs. That task becomes even harder when you are going up against a known local National Party MP, right? And I've said this before, that the National Party brand in Victoria is probably the strongest nationally. So they're very good MPs. They know how to do their job on the ground. As you come into Melbourne, yes, you'll easily see Labor lose seats in those sort of outer provincial electorates. Whether they lose Bendigo, the 2 Bendigo seats, we don't know, but I wouldn't rule that out. Ripon, of course, anything that's basically regional is going to be in big trouble when it comes to a Labor versus One Nation contest. Then you come into Melbourne, and the outer suburbs of Melbourne is where most of Labor's problems sit. Their primary vote is in the low 30s in all electorates. I think I don't see an electorate where the primary vote exceeds 35 anywhere.
That's west, east,
west, east, north, west, up, down, doesn't really matter. It is absolutely the universal trait.
Now, just to give people a sense, because people who watch Australian politics, think that a major party vote with a 3 in front of it is just the normal. But you and I know that out in the West, Labor has historically boasted primaries of 50, 60, yes. 70, yes. Even I think there are cases where it's been 80% primary.
No, I think the
Certainly you'd get-
highest I've seen in all records is about 70-something
yeah,
percent.
but there'd be booths where
Yeah.
Labor has historically
Yes.
polled
Yeah.
80%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the collapse, is staggering.
Well, it's also
It's been a slow collapse.
yes. Well,
But there is. We're going to talk about Jacinta Allan, but this has been a slow burn collapse.
I think it's been accelerated over the last 10 years because
Yeah, and we know that
we've
COVID
had
has played a part.
yeah, well, we've had a government that has deliberately leaned away from their core constituency. They would argue they haven't, but if you were to set yourself up an Excel spreadsheet and document where the millions have gone over the last decade, overwhelmingly they've gone into middle urban wealthy electorates, and they've lent away from their natural constituencies. And you know what? We live in a democracy, so if you're not servicing people and people feel neglected or abandoned, they won't vote for you. That's what democracy is about. For some stupid, silly reason, there's people culturally within the Labor Party who thought, well, they're always going to vote for us. It's kind of like you're always going to go and shop at Woolworths. No, you can go and shop somewhere else. And so that's the other thing that we've seen, and that is that over the last 10 years, we've seen that the decline of that natural constituency. Every election, they have lost primary votes in all their safe seats. In 2022, that decline was massive and ignored. And so now they have basically no safe seats, and could actually, at the moment, if they lose more support within the electorate, they could actually fit into an SUV. Equally, if they increase their primary by 3 or 4 points, they could probably get to 44, 45 seats. This is how precariously balanced the whole thing is, right? So, but again, things are so volatile and so fragile that we could see any result come November.
What does it look like now, though, in terms of numbers? I saw some Victorian Trades Hall polling.
Yeah, we did the polling for them.
That's a leading question, Cosy.
That's a leading question.
They was talking about potentially 34 One Nations.
No, the high end's 20.
Am I imagining that?
Yeah, high end's 20.
That's still a lot of seats.
It's a lot of seats, and they only get to 20 because we go back to the point I made, and that is that in the
Remind people how many seats there are in the Victorian Parliament.
88 electorates. The magic number's 45 to win. High end, you can see Labor getting to 44. Low end, it could end up with low 20s. As it stands now, it's very important that we acknowledge that these are temperature reads of the electorate, not a prediction of an election outcome. Yeah, the coalition geared up as high as 50, but again, low in the 20s. So again, these huge differences with just the primary vote moving 1 or 2 percentage points can alter the trajectory of an election in a very significant way. So, I mean, that's the world we're looking at. At the moment, if you were to put a gun to my head and ask me what the result will be, I would say it's a coalition government with One Nation supply. So coalition won't get the 45 seats off its own steam, and it will rely on One Nation for supply.
Yes, I was going to ask you about the Libs. Jess Wilson, ostensibly appears to be campaigning reasonably well.
Yep.
She gives off the appearance of being competent, which is an underappreciated quality.
Yeah, look, and also because she's doing her job so well, that I wouldn't rule out that come November, depending on how Labor's managing its own internal affairs, voters who are currently planning to vote for One Nation just flip their vote because they see Jess Wilson as the change agent.
Yeah.
Right? And so
a form of tactical voting.
Yeah, correct. And so you start seeing a lot more seats fall to the Liberal Party that Labor's held historically. But as it stands right now, and it could change, we're 4 months away, those electorates, in Melbourne's eastern suburbs will fall to the Liberal Party. So we have seen a very significant surge, and it's off the back of her work, of the Liberal primary in areas where historically the Liberals have done well in Melbourne. So in other words, that vote's coming back home.
I want to turn to the elephant in the room in a moment, but just staying with One Nation, there's still correct me if I'm wrong, Cos, but there still seems to be a lack of organisation on the ground. They don't have a leader. I mean, it's extraordinary that a party which doesn't have a leader, which doesn't have a CHQ, a campaign headquarters.
They do have one in Brisbane.
Yeah, but we're talking about Victoria. They have none of that.
Yep.
And yet 1 in 3 Victorians are indicating they're going to vote.
Yeah, but again,
One Nation.
Too many people in politics think about elections the way political junkies do, right? Which is you need an office, you need a leader. No, you don't. You don't need anything. Just put One Nation on the ballot paper and people are going to vote for it. That's as simple as that. I mean, at the South Australian election, I think Corey Bernardi was announced their sort of pseudo leader with about 6 weeks to go. So there's no rush from their perspective, And I know a lot of people in the media and political circles say, well, they're going to implode, they're going to do X. Again, yes, the ceiling's been reached. Yes, Hanson has provided, particularly the left side of politics with ammunition, but they don't need to really run a sophisticated campaign. They are a protest party now at the moment, right?
Well, the proof will be in the pudding come November 26. Cos, now to the elephant in the room. Jacinta Allan's leadership. There's been persistent leadership chatter. Things seem to be coming to a head. There's been lots of reportage last night and this morning that she will be tapped. It's unfortunate, but her position, speaking frankly, would seem to be untenable.
Yeah, I mean, the only point I'll make on this subject is that but there are a lot of people in politics who make assumptions. For example, remove the current leader and your electoral problems go away. There's a unicorn in the garden somewhere. These are assumptions. There's no data suggesting to anyone that a change in leader will fix the problem. This has been in the making for 10 years. So Labor's got problems in the outer suburbs. It isn't because of one person. It's because of the deliberate policy framework that they've embraced. My point here, though, Nick, is that they're all in this bucket of, turmoil because they all acquiesced to a policy approach which has been in the making for 10 years. When it was clear that this government was deliberately targeting wealthy suburbs at the expense of working class ones, no one said a peep because it was working. And now that all the chickens are coming home to roost, it's suddenly, we've got to roll the leader. Well, it may work, it may not work. We don't know. Will someone be able to get to work quicker? No. Will someone be able to go to a community hospital and have it staffed? No. Again, right? Because the state of politics when it comes to this Labor government has been in the making for 10 years.
So what is you don't think a change of leader would have any?
No, I don't know.
You don't know. Yes.
No.
Well, none of us know.
That's right. But the data, I only go by the data. And so I don't know. Right? It's pretty simple. We do not know. We don't have any reference point when it comes to research to suggest to us that a change will help. Equally, flip side, that we don't have, again, any data to suggest to us that if you keep the current leader, it will help. We don't know.
I'm sure that data is kept at Victorian CH.
No, it wouldn't be. No, you can't measure
really?
it. No, you can't measure it because, see, the voting public may indeed suddenly change their mind, or the portion that Labor has lost over the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years, change their mind and go back to voting Labor. That might be the case. Or the primary might just stay the same. There is nothing out there that enables you to measure accurately what human beings' response is to a changed circumstance like this. We just have to wait and see. So you and I will be talking about this probably in a couple of weeks' time, where we will have maybe some data to tell us whether a change has helped or whether it has not helped. But we have to be guided by the numbers.
No, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think it looks fairly certain that we are going to see a leadership change. And my view is a long-standing view that these things can often provide a short-term sugar hit. But I think the Victorian Party, which has experienced cause 4.5 decades of extraordinary success, given the history of Victorian Labor, which was really a basket case up until the early 1980s and the election of John Cain Sr. in 1982. We may well look back in a few years and
John
see
Cain
this.
Jr., isn't it?
John Cain Jr.
Yeah.
I'm getting my decades switched
That's
up.
right.
He, of course, was the unfortunate Victorian Labor Premier in the 1950s who had to endure the split. There's another John Cain Jr.
Yes.
Out and about Melbourne. But we may look back at I think this is going to be a watershed election. It's going to tell us a lot about Victoria. It's going to tell us a lot about how Victorians have perceived these years. I think people are, when you keep an eye on the long-term trends and what's really the deep sort of tectonic plates cause, I think people have forgotten just how hard COVID hit Melbourne and Victoria, and we're still seeing we're going to see the aftershocks of COVID. Victorian Labor very much got lucky in 2022 that wasn't a referendum on COVID and COVID management, and much of that was due to Liberal ineptness. But there's a sense in which 2026 is the election where Victorians finally get to express their pent-up frustrations.
Well, that all boils down to, again, what we've been talking about. So what the Labor government should have done when they came out of lockdowns was wrap their arms around communities, around families that clearly have struggled during that period. And instead of it being a bricks and mortar and concrete response to the political challenges, building more infrastructure, it should have been investing in human beings and communities. If they had done that, I think you and I would be having a very different conversation. So the PTSD has landed much harder now as a result of that, because they didn't do that. So a lot of Victorians will tell us they feel abandoned post that experience. And again, it goes to the heart of why this particular Labor government will probably be marked very severely when you compare it to the Braxton Brumby years. So Braxton Brumby, they kind of rebuilt the brand from the sort of stigma of the Cain Kerner years of basically mismanaging the books. You could say that from 2014 to now, it's been a long road of dismantling that strong brand that Brax particular built for Labor in Victoria, and I think that dismantling was accelerated by the poor response coming out of the pandemic, and I think we'll see writ large what that looks like in November.
So, what is the pathway back for Labor? It's a grim position. If you were sitting inside campaign headquarters, Cos, what would concern you most, and what would you? Well, we know what concerns you most. What would you do?
I'll prepare for the next generation. That next generation will take
big call, Cos.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a government's asking for 16 years under this current political environment. That's going to be pretty hard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but equally, irrespective of what that result looks like in November, they still have to plan it for the future and rebuild and recalibrate the political movement that they belong to towards representing salaried, wage-earning Victorians. And that's their mission. And I am confident that the next generation that's coming through has the empathy and capacity to do this.
Some argue, Cos, Ben Carroll, who's been mooted as the most likely to take the leadership reins, some would say he is the next generation. Are we talking about, and he's a good friend of the John Curtin Research Centre. G'day, Ben, if you're out there. I know you do listen occasionally. Some would say he is the next generation, but and some would argue that, in fact, a mutual friend of ours, Cos, has argued to me, at least in private, that the party would be burning Ben to make him leader. Do you see a grain of truth in that, or do you think that the party needs to roll the dice?
Look, I think when we're talking about the next generation, it's really about people who don't have a strong connection to that 2014 or the class of 2014 and the political doctrine that came out of that. So you could say that to a certain extent, Ben doesn't belong to it. He's been around long enough to have some association with it, but I think he would admit that he probably thinks differently than the old guard does. But there are many more that are aiming to get re-elected. So to your initial question about what I would do if I was in CHQ, I'll be focusing on protecting that next generation, making sure they are re-elected in their seats. And I will not have 45 seats on my list at the moment. I'll have probably 35.
Interesting, Cos. Very interesting. We're going to be paying very close attention to the Victorian election. I still regard it as potentially the most consequential state election in Australia to be held in decades. It's only 4 months away now. We'll be tracking almost every single poll, every trend, and every strategic shift right up towards polling day on November the 26th. Kung Fu Samaras, thank you. It's been wonderful seeing you again. Curtinistas, if you've enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and refer a mate. Share the podcast across Apple, Spotify, YouTube. But until next week, it's ciao and arrivederci.